The day I discovered my sister had stolen from me started like any other. Coffee in hand, the soft hum of my laptop, scanning through the latest financial reports for work. Being a federal financial crimes expert meant I lived in numbers, in patterns, in red flags most people didn't even notice. Fraud, identity theft, embezzlement. They were puzzles I solved daily. I prided myself on spotting a threat before it became a problem. Yet nothing in my career could have prepared me for this. It started innocuously. A small alert on my phone about a recent loan application. At first, I thought it was a mistake, a glitch in the system. But then I opened my email, and my stomach sank. A notice from the bank confirmed a 90,000 loan had been taken out in my name. Everything in that email screamed identity theft, every detail perfectly aligned with my personal information. And yet, part of me froze, paralyzed by disbelief. My sister. No, that's impossible. I called the bank immediately, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. The representative confirmed my worst fears. The loan had been approved, signed, and now the payments were due. But there was something more. The digital signature, it was unmistakable. My sister had forged it. She had used my identity to take out a loan that she couldn't possibly repay, leaving me exposed. Memories of our childhood flashed before me, bittersweet and sharp. I remembered the small arguments over trivial things, her envious glances when I excelled at school, her whispered frustrations when I was praised. I had always hoped she would grow out of it, that the jealousy and rivalry were harmless. But this was a betrayal of the deepest kind. It wasn't just the money, it was the violation of trust. She had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. I sat back in my chair, the room spinning, trying to process the magnitude of it. Every number, every document, every digital trace screamed my sister's involvement. Part of me ached to confront her immediately, to yell, to cry, to demand answers. But another part, my professional side, kicked in. If she thought she could manipulate me, she had gravely underestimated me. I remembered the countless cases I'd investigated, families torn apart by fraud, careers destroyed by reckless greed, lives ruined by small, calculated acts of deceit. I had seen the aftermath, the broken people left in the wake of betrayal. And now, it was personal. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I began pulling every digital thread I could find. Emails, text messages, bank statements, IP logs. Every interaction my sister had related to finances in the last year was cataloged, analyzed, traced. I wasn't just gathering evidence, I was plotting a path forward, a way to ensure she couldn't escape accountability. And beneath that professional drive was a darker, more personal emotion, an undeniable desire for revenge. Not reckless, not impulsive, but precise, methodical, and unforgettable. As the day turned into night, I finally allowed myself to confront the raw truth. The sister I had loved, trusted, and protected had crossed the ultimate line, and I would make sure she realized the cost of that betrayal. But first, I would watch, I would plan, I would wait. Because she had no idea who she was dealing with. I wasn't just her sister anymore. I was her reckoning. I didn't rush to confront her. Not yet. My experience had taught me that the first reaction, the first wave of anger, could cloud judgment. Instead, I waited, observed, and prepared. But that night, when I heard her voice humming down the hallway, I realized waiting was no longer an option. She looked up when I called her name, a hint of confusion in her eyes. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice casual, unaware of the storm I had meticulously cultivated in my mind. I held up my laptop, letting the screen glow between us like a neon accusation. There it was, her name, my name, the loan documents, the forged signature. Her eyes widened, and for a brief moment, the mask slipped. I can explain," she stammered, words tumbling out faster than she could control them. But there was no excuse that could erase the betrayal. "Explain." I echoed, my voice calm, deliberate, each word measured like a scalpel. "Explain how you thought it was acceptable to take out a 90,000 loan in my name." She looked down, shame flickering across her face, quickly replaced by defensiveness. "I needed it, okay. I didn't know how else to. I wasn't thinking straight." I felt a surge of conflicting emotions. Rage, sorrow, disbelief. But I kept my composure. Every gesture, every micro-expression, I noted. Years of training had taught me to see beyond the words, to read the truth hiding in hesitation, in stammered defenses. "You weren't thinking straight," I repeated, my eyes cold but unwavering. "You used my identity, my trust, and my life is collateral for your mistakes. Do you have any idea what you've done? The damage you could have caused?" Her voice cracked. I just needed help. I thought you'd understand." "You always understand?" "But I didn't. Not this time. Not ever." Understanding her actions would be condoning them, and I couldn't. Betrayal like this demanded reckoning. And as I looked at her, my sister, my blood, the person I had defended and protected for years, I realized that forgiveness would not be the immediate answer. There had to be accountability. "I do understand one thing," I said, my tone even, clinical even, though inside my chest felt like it was being ripped open. "I understand that I cannot let this go, and you cannot undo what you've done. But I also understand something else. You have no idea who you're dealing with." Her eyes met mine, and for a fleeting second, I saw fear. Real, raw fear. Something I hadn't seen in her before. She hadn't anticipated my response. My capacity to unravel every thread she had woven. She thought I would react with tears or anger alone. But I had something far more dangerous: precision. "You're not going to just call the bank, report it, and move on," I continued, letting the words sink in, tasting them. This is a lesson. And lessons have consequences." She swallowed hard, shaking slightly. I could see the panic forming, but it was tempered by confusion. She didn't know the depths of my expertise. She didn't know that every financial document, every digital trail, and every loophole had already been cataloged. She had stepped into a battlefield she couldn't even see. I didn't mean," she began, but I cut her off. "Intent doesn't erase action, and action has consequences." My words hung in the air like a guillotine. "You've crossed the line, and I will make sure you face it. But not recklessly. Carefully, strategically, just as you should have been careful before crossing me." For the first time, she looked small, unarmed, exposed. And I knew, in that moment, that the scales had shifted. She was no longer in control. I was. And I would make her understand, piece by piece, exactly what betrayal costs. After the confrontation, I retreated to the sanctuary of my home office, the dim light of the desk lamp, casting long shadows across the walls. My sister's betrayal was a wound, but in my profession, wounds were converted into strategy. Every identity theft case I'd ever handled, every fraud I'd dismantled from the inside, had prepared me for this moment. Not as an expert solving a crime, but as a sister reclaiming justice. I pulled out her digital footprint like a detective assembling a case: emails, text messages, financial transactions, social media interactions. Every slip, every omission, every moment of carelessness was a thread I could follow. I traced the loan application, the IP addresses she had used, the timing of her inquiries. It was almost poetic how reckless she had been, believing I wouldn't notice, believing blood meant loyalty over logic. The first step was subtle. She needed to feel secure, confident, untouchable. I let her believe she had gotten away with it. Every text she sent, every phone call she made about the loan, I silently cataloged. I marked inconsistencies, tiny mistakes only someone with my expertise could detect. She was already unraveling, and she didn't even know it yet. Then came the psychological play. I began inserting small, controlled consequences into her life. I subtly alerted her creditors of the suspicious activity tied to her accounts, ensuring her small financial missteps became apparent. Nothing catastrophic, yet, but enough to seed doubt, fear, and anxiety. She began noticing coincidences, minor delays, curious questions from financial institutions. Her confidence began to waver, though she couldn't yet place the source. Every night, I drafted scenarios, calculating the chain reactions of each move. Should I report the full 90,000 loan to the authorities immediately? Or should I manipulate the system to let her feel the slow erosion of control? My choice was clear: slow, deliberate, and educational. She needed to feel the consequences of betrayal, the full weight of what she had done, without destroying her life entirely. I also prepared contingencies. If she tried to cover her tracks, I had digital proofs embedded in multiple locations. Copies of every incriminating document, screenshots, metadata, and timestamped communications ensured I held all the leverage. No lawyer, no bank, no oops moment could erase her culpability. Emotionally, I was careful not to let anger cloud judgment. Revenge, I reminded myself, is a precision instrument, not a blunt weapon. Every action had a purpose: to teach, to caution, to reclaim the integrity she had attempted to steal. I felt a strange calm settling over me, A sense of empowerment that only comes from knowing the battlefield, and having the tools to navigate it flawlessly. And yet, there was a pang of sadness. She was still my sister, still family. Part of me mourned the trust I had lost, the innocence of shared secrets and laughter that now felt tainted. But another part, the larger, dominant part, surged with clarity. Betrayal is unforgivable when it undermines the foundation of everything you've built. She had tested me, and I would respond. Not with blind rage, but with calculated justice. I envisioned the culmination, a moment where she would finally confront the consequences of her actions, fully aware of her mistakes. She would feel exposed, vulnerable, and accountable. And when that moment came, she would understand that I had not only caught her, but outmaneuvered her every step of the way. With the plan drafted, the digital threads traced, and contingencies in place, I leaned back in my chair. The game had begun. I was no longer just a victim, I was the architect of the reckoning. The betrayal was personal, but the response was professional, meticulous, deliberate, and devastating in its subtlety. And she had no idea what was coming. The weeks that followed were a quiet storm. My sister moved through her days with growing unease, unaware that every coincidence and small disruption was a carefully orchestrated ripple of my plan. Late fees appeared on her accounts, phone calls from lenders arrived unexpectedly, and subtle inquiries from financial institutions made her hesitate before every move. She was unraveling, not through force, but through the precision of a hand she could never see. I watched from the sidelines, maintaining the guise of normalcy, letting her believe she was still in control. Each misstep she made, each frantic call she placed, each excuse she concocted, fed the quiet satisfaction building inside me. Not satisfaction in cruelty, but in justice. I had not only caught her, but I had also created a mirror for her to see herself clearly. Her recklessness, her deception, and the trust she had shattered. One evening, she approached me eyes wide, voice shaking. "I don't understand, why is everything falling apart? I paid everything. I fixed what I could, I don't know why this is happening." I smiled softly, a mixture of sorrow and triumph. "You're only now beginning to understand the consequences of your actions," I said gently, yet firmly. "I gave you every chance to realize what you did, but you never stopped to think about me, about the person you betrayed most deeply." She trembled, her defiance melting into guilt. I was desperate. I didn't know what else to do. I'm sorry." Her apology was fragile, almost broken, but I didn't accept it immediately. Forgiveness was not mine to grant lightly. It was the culmination of accountability. Desperation does not give anyone the right to steal someone else's life, I said. You used my name, my identity, and my trust. Do you understand the gravity of that? She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. The realization hit her fully for the first time. She had not only endangered me financially but had violated the bond we shared as sisters. Her remorse was real, but so was the lesson she now had to live with. I revealed the final piece of my plan, not in anger, but in the quiet authority that comes from being in control. The loan was resolved, subtly rerouted, corrected, and placed under scrutiny she could not avoid. The authorities would be aware, her credit monitored, and her future financial decisions carefully documented. The consequences were significant but fair, calibrated to teach responsibility rather than destroy her. You see, I explained, actions have consequences. And while I could have destroyed your financial life completely, I chose a path that lets you learn from this. You have to rebuild your trust, not just with me, but with yourself. For the first time, she seemed small, not the confident, reckless sister who had forged my signature, but someone truly aware of the weight of her mistakes. I don't know how to make this right, she whispered. You start by being honest, by accepting accountability, and by never thinking you can take shortcuts at the expense of others. I said. My tone softened. And maybe, one day, if you prove yourself, trust can be rebuilt. But it won't be automatic, and it won't be easy. We sat together in silence, the tension between us heavy but shifting. I felt a strange mixture of sorrow and relief. Betrayal had cut deep, but justice, when delivered with precision and patience, had the power to heal. Even if only partially. As I reflected on the ordeal, I realized something fundamental. My expertise in financial crimes had not only protected my assets, but it had also safeguarded my dignity and self-respect. I had transformed anger into strategy, betrayal into accountability, and pain into clarity. She had crossed a line, and I had drawn the map of her consequences. In the end, justice was served, not as vengeance, but as a lesson etched into memory. And I, her sister, would never again be someone to underestimate. We were forever changed, but the reckoning had been delivered.